Hey, folks, and welcome to this episode of The Grow Show. Now, The Grow Show is here to help you grow yourself, grow your business, and grow your community. And we do this by talking to really cool people and listen to what they've got to learn, got to tell us about what they're passionate about. So today's guest is the fantastic Jen Tiller. Now, Jen is the breathing coach. We are going to be talking about breath. We're going to be talking about how we breathe and how we can use breath to relax, calm, and improve our bodies, our minds, and so much more. I think I've covered it all, Jen, but how are you doing today?
I am having a wonderful time. It's always great to be here with someone like yourself who really is passionate about the community. And for me, I've never been busier through this time because suddenly people are aware of breathing and lungs. So it's a great way to get across something I've been trying to teach for 20 years.
Brilliant. So, for the people who don't know you, let's talk about the breathing coach and Healing Zone Academy, if you don't mind. You know, where did it all start? Where did it all start from? Where did it all begin?
Wow, it's a long story. I'll try and keep it short. I'm an ex-asthmatic, ex-agoraphobic, ex-disaster area. From the time I was a tiny child, I wheezed, coughed, and panicked my way through life. It wasn't until my 30s that I found some answers, and I trained in everything that worked for me. So Buteyko breathing, hypnosis, NLP, lots of little acronyms. And that's fine. And then I discovered there's a world full of people who needed what I knew. And the more we go through modern life, the longer we go through the stress levels, the more we need it. Because we need to come back to calm and comfort and good breathing, because it's a bit basic. You don't breathe well, you don't live well. And I've been teaching therapists for nearly 20 years as well. So that's the Healing Zone Academy bit. So wellness professionals, because I want to help 1 million people breathe better, and I can't do it on my own. So if I can reach out to the people who are already supporting other people with their skills and add to that, bonus.
Brilliant. And you say that, I suppose, when people hear about breathing, you know, their first thought, some people's first thought might be, well, of course I breathe. I do it all the time. You know,
so you should.
And, yeah, exactly. So why is it important to breathe well? And do the majority of people not breathe well?
That's a really good question. Anybody who is unwell is almost definitely breathing badly, because any stress on the system, physical, mental, or emotional, will cause people to breathe faster. What does anybody do when they get a fright, Gary?
They breathe fast. Yeah.
They either lock off and stop breathing, or they go, there's a puffing and panting. It is a response to stress. Now, in case you guys haven't noticed, this whole world is currently in a stress mode. Now, if you've got a condition like asthma and you start to breathe like that, it could trigger an asthma attack. If you have blood pressure issues, it will increase your blood pressure. There are all sorts of factors when breathing more than you need for the level of activity. So breathing like you're running up a hill when you're sitting in a chair, for example. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That's actually work you shouldn't be doing. Whereas if you breathe slower and more calmly, oddly enough, not only does the immune system like that, but your brain does. So calming down involves slower breathing. And as a hypnotherapist, one of my jobs is to talk more slowly, because people get relaxed and fall asleep on me, which is great. But there's more to it than that. If you are breathing for whatever reason, whether it's a habit, whether it's a moment in time, and you're doing that shallow breathing thing, just to be aware, people, you don't have lungs up here. Moving your shoulders up and down doesn't do the job. If you want the air to get to the bottom of the lungs and have a really good oxygen uptake, you need to be breathing through the nose, because it filters the air and warms it and moistens it, and using the belly bellows. So expand as you breathe in, contract as you breathe out, and that draws air to the bottom of the lungs. And it turns off fight or flight, because the in-breath is managed by, fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system. The out breath is part of the relaxation mode, the parasympathetic. And if you spend time breathing in a way that the body goes, we're safe, it will give you a whole set of biochemical positives, and it calms everything down. Your immune system, your mind, your muscles. I could babble on about this for hours, but then again, that's just kind of why I'm here. So I'm going to keep
Exactly.
babbling.
No, I know. I love this. And I will I love the fact that we're having this conversation. I said to you before that I started to I changed my breathing pattern probably around September time last year. I listened to a podcast. I can't remember the details of the podcast, but it was talking about the differences between nose breathing and mouth breathing. And it mentioned at the same time as doing that, I was doing the calm meditation. I was using the calm meditation app every day or every other day at that point. And I was becoming aware of taking better kind of breath. The better. I was starting to become aware of my breathing patterns at that point. I hadn't got it sussed at that point, but I was becoming more aware. And I started nose breathing during the day. And then with my meditation, I started kind of breathing and then using my belly to store the breath and then kind of releasing it. And it suddenly became a lot easier to do. And I started to do it when I was cycling. And I was able to cycle a little bit further, a little bit faster with the same amount of breath. It wasn't at the start. It was hard at the start, but that was my body getting used to it. And then suddenly, actually, I was in meetings, and if I wanted to calm down, I'd just focus on the breath, and it worked. Before talking at networking events or in front of different people using presentations, I'd just take a couple of deep breaths rather than kind of doing the Superman and getting rolled up. It was completely different. So for me, I love this conversation because I think more and more people should hear it, especially at this time.
Yes, I completely agree with you. One of the things, when I'm working with clients, they may not be ill, right? You don't have to be sick to want to breathe better. You just want to feel better. And I work with athletes who are already at the top of their game, but they want more stamina. And weirdly enough, they need to breathe slower, because when you breathe faster, your system goes into overload and everything gets tense. So if you can go into flow mode because you're breathing low and slow, you get much more out of it. And the number of people I work with these days who are actors and speakers and just talking is their livelihood, then if you breathe by speaking really quickly and then you take a big mouth breath in, because you have to breathe out speaking through your mouth, because otherwise you're so you do need to mouth breathe when you're doing it. But when you breathe in, if you close the mouth and breathe in through the nose gently, it settles you down and it gives your audience a chance to take in what you just said. And that's an interesting bonus. So if you're a professional speaker, give people time. You know that whole thing about the Winston Churchill thing? I will fight them on the beaches. Stop. We will da-da-da-da-da. Stop. He's a great orator, was obviously. And it's because of the rhythm of the speech. It gives people a chance to engage with it and to feel drawn into it. So sometimes it's that sort of thing. But for athletes, the simple thing, okay, here's something you guys might like to try at home. And it's, what's the heaviest thing you lift every day is my usual starting point for this. Now, if you're an athlete, a weightlifter who really lifts 150 kilos, occasionally, okay, it happens. I don't see many of them, but sometimes people do. But for almost everybody, it is your own body weight. So when you stand up, how do you breathe when you stand up? And 99% of people, they don't even think about it. It's below conscious awareness. But they'll do something like this. I'm going to exaggerate. My head will probably vanish behind the screen, excuse me. So they will breathe in, lean forward, and heave up like that. There's a real effort involved in that. The muscles tense up because you're on the in-breath. You're holding the breath, which means you're locking off your just your gut. And by the time you get up, you're tense. So if you're getting up to go and do something, by the time you got there, you spend a lot of time in tension. I think on average we could do with less tension in our lives. So here's a tip. If you breathe out before you stand up and rest the breath, so you don't breathe in again until you stand up. So it's breathe out, breathe in at the top. And I don't know if you could see the difference, but I didn't need to move forward and heave and stretch. I just floated up. And it feels literally like you weigh about half as much. It's half the effort because your system is in relaxation mode. The muscles are longer. There's more blood flow. There's just so many benefits to this that people just aren't aware of. They might know accidentally that they were relaxed for some reason, but they can't recreate it. And the idea is if you recognize what your body's doing when it works well, you could do it more often.
It's a simple idea. Hard to do, simple idea. But it all starts by being aware of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. So if you know that you're breathing in and shallow breathing, just go, oh, good, I noticed. Don't tell yourself off ever for that. Just go, I noticed. It's great. And then see if you can come back to belly breathing. Expand as you breathe in, contract as you breathe out, because that moves the air to the bottom of the lungs. It's a simple concept. It takes practice. Easier to practice the first time if you've never done this before. Go and lie down on a yoga mat or on your bed and stick a book on your tummy and push it up and down. It does wonders.
I know, because it's visual as well. I can imagine that a lot of people will be able to see the difference straight away, as well as feel the difference.
Yeah.
They will. So we've spoken about kind of athletes. We've spoken about public speakers. How about just kind of people, let's say working at home or working in an office or store? You know, how can they benefit from proper breathing? I mean, you've already alluded to it, but could it make him calmer? What kind of benefits would they have?
Look, okay. At a practical level, slowing your breathing down quiets the mind. If you do the breathe out, rest the breath. Actually, let's all try this right now. Literally, just breathe out through your nose, preferably. And when you've breathed out, just rest the breath for a couple of moments. And then breathe in gently and slowly. Let's do it again. Slowly, in your own time. Don't try to match our rhythm. Just breathe out slowly. Rest the breath. Notice what's happening in your mind. And breathe in. What happened in yours, Gary, in that space between the breaths? What happened?
Just slow down. Everything just slowed down. And I was able to notice the gaps in between, the pause in between the in and out.
Yeah.
That's what highlights me a lot.
Yeah. The thing is, it just shuts busy brain off. Literally, both halves of the brain start to talk to each other. And that rapid thinking, you think beautifully and clearly in the space, or just you have a little rest. And it's waiting for you between every breath. So for people who've never been able to meditate, never reached that, start with this. It's always waiting for you. So if you're between phone calls and you're just going, my brain's in fried, just do that. Even a couple of times will just bring you back to, okay, I've got this. And the mind, you'll make better decisions if you're breathing better. It's a very simple thing. At the other end of the scale, 1 in 10 people in this country have asthma. 1 in 10. And a lot of them are working in offices and struggling with that. And they might get to the office and they're frantically busy, but they're a little more tired because maybe they didn't sleep so well. Or if you're anxious and you're worrying about stuff, same thing. So giving yourself permission to look after yourself, to relax. And when you do move, remember, stand up in the pause. Even actually, if you're going to lean down and pick something up, you breathe out on the way down because that'll push the air out correctly, through the nose if you can. and then lift up whatever it is in the pores. And it will feel like less work. We've got enough to do these days. Make it easier. So at a practical level, and if you're asthmatic, by the way, as I used to be, quick plug for those who need to be aware of this. If your airways start to close down, it's because you're breathing too rapidly and too shallow. If you can slow your breathing down, the airways will have weirdly more carbon dioxide and nitric oxide, and it will open the airways. People will need less medication. Now, I'm not saying, if you're prescribed it, you take what you're supposed to take, but if you've got reliever spray and you need it less often, that's brilliant. I had a lady this morning in Brunei, gotta love Zoom, and she was wheezing and coughing and struggling, and by the end of a half-hour session with me, her airways had opened up. She said, I feel more relaxed. I'm not irritated with my airways. I'm not coughing. And she'd been like that for months, and she really struggled. And all we did was slow her breathing down and eventually, with a bit of work, get the tummy doing its job. Because the diaphragm is not under your conscious control. Like the heart, it's in your unconscious level. But you can move those muscles consciously. Wiggle, 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 people. And when you do that, the diaphragm drops and does its job. I'm going to shut up now. That was
no. I love it.
Okay?
No, I love it. And is this something that people have just forgotten how to do, or did we never know this to start off with? So if you go back a couple of 100 years, was everyone doing this, or is this just something that we've, as a modern day kind of technology age where we're busy, we've just forgot?
It's a really good question. Back in the 1930s, when they started to measure lung function, so how many litres per minute a healthy person would breathe to the baseline. Modern humans apparently are now breathing almost twice as much as normal. So they're already breathing more heavily than they were back in the 1930s. And, you did get an occasional person who would really struggle with asthma, and you'd have a couple of deaths a year. Thinking NHS numbers, the data's there if anybody's really interested. It's a hell of a lot more common now because you haven't got the buffer zone. So between stress, pollution, and not a natural diet. I mean, they might not have had a great diet, but at least it didn't have lots of chemicals in it. Modern life is stressful for most people, and they don't necessarily eat what is good for them. And they're in an environment which is not always good for them. But you can get a lot of the value back by learning how to breathe more correctly and bring it back to what it should be. And then you've got that buffer zone. So if you get stressed, you're not going to go straight into overload. Mm-hmm. And you can come back. If your body thinks calm is normal, guess what? You can have a stressy day and come back to calm. But you have to have a baseline that says, I can do this. That your body will just, muscle memory, take you back to, oh, I feel better now. And just come back.
I love it. And we had Grow Live, so our annual event last month. It happened on the 16th and 17th of September. And there was quite a few people who were talking about that everybody's base levels, and it goes on, so exactly what you're saying, everyone's base levels are currently in stress or just below it. And we don't realise we've gone into that level. And
it's our normal. It's become our normal.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's really good, again, people to hear that message again. And well, actually, we are in that buffer zone. We are at the top of that, and we need to kind of go down slightly.
Yeah. And it gives us so many more benefits. There's no downside to better breathing, people. No, never is. You don't have to become a yoga specialist, although that's a great thing, but you don't have to become a Buddhist monk either to breathe better, because you're breathing 20 to 30,000 times a day. And it either, the cumulative effect of bad breathing, it's going to catch up with you. You might be fine today and tomorrow and next week, but maybe in a year's time not. The cumulative benefit of good breathing is almost immediate. It's fascinating. The body just goes, oh, good. Because for those of you who are parents or grandparents now, if you have a small baby, you watch a healthy baby, they nose breathe, and they use their tummy to breathe. You know a baby is sick when they stop doing this. You know, and you panic, and you go to the doctors. Half the human population is now doing that as a habit. We should be a little bit more conscious of taking the edge off, calming it down, just slowing it. Now, if you happen to count how many breaths per minute you take, if you could just make that 1 or 2 less, over the course of a couple of days, the system will start to create a new pattern, a new habit. It doesn't have to be difficult, it doesn't have to be massive. Just a small change. Little and often with awareness. Because we're all breathing. End of. We do need to do that. Like you think about what you eat 3 or 4 times a day, right? Everybody is conscious that, oh gosh, that's good food or that's bad food. Mm-hmm. They might feel guilty about it, but they might still eat it. But it's, but 20 to 30,000 times a day, that's a lot of opportunities to help your health and help your mind. So,
brilliant. So,
yeah,
it's brilliant, and it's again, it sounds so simple. And the first step is to be aware of it, which is obviously what we're doing in this conversation. And can you remember the time when you became aware of this, and kind of? Can we just kind of talk about your change, your transition between not doing it and doing it?
Unbelievably dramatic. I went from, I think I'm going to die tonight, despite being on steroids and antibiotics and puffers and you name it, everything. My doctor's a family friend, or he was at that time, 20 odd years ago, but back in Australia. And he was worried to death about me. He was really hovering. And I really thought I was going to die. And I found this, the Buteyko breathing lady, one of the earliest ones in the country. And I rang her up and I said, I'm really, really scared. I booked on your course, but I'm just scared and I don't know what to do. And she said, I can hear you breathing from here. Close your mouth. Because I was, and I thought she was mad because I hadn't been able to breathe through my nose in years. But I struggled with it, but I pretended to breathe through my, and oddly enough, my airways started to open up almost instantly because I was not fighting and rapid breathing. 3 weeks later, I'd been to 5 2-hour sessions in the group with her, and my doctor had come with me to check it out at one point to make sure I was safe, which I loved. I learned that I've been breathing wrong my whole life. And that they weren't even into the belly breathing, it was just slowing it down and breathing through the nose. And that was in 3 weeks, I went from, I think I'm going to die, to off my medication with my doctor's approval, 3 weeks.
Wow.
Changed my world and my perception of what was possible. Because I thought I was going to die from this condition. Everybody else, when I was a kid, thought I was going to die from this condition. And I thought I was stuck with it forever. And I had been so scared, I didn't know whether I was more scared to live with the condition or to die of it. Genuinely, that was how bad it was for quite a long while. And I was bubble girl. I was allergic to so many things. The doctor said, if you can smell something, anything, run. I had exercise-induced asthma. I wasn't going to run anywhere. I was so sensitive to the world. I have a background, there's trauma and stuff in the background. But I got to that place with decades of history, and I learned to breathe differently, and I stopped. This is just the gift, the miracle of that. And I have been free of medication and wheeze, haven't had bronchitis, but for 20-something years now. It's stuck because it works. I did the practice. I can teach people this stuff. I can't do their breathing for them. we have to take responsibility. And actually, that's a really important thing. Responsibility is one thing, as an idea, it's my responsibility to look after myself and do things. But you have to have the response ability. If you don't have the ability to respond differently, what are you going to do? So, I'm encouraging people to have more options for their response.
Brilliant. Now, quick question. But the people who have never kind of nose breathed in their life because parents might not nose breathe, so therefore they copy their parents and kind of they're breathing through the mouth. So that's what we do as kids. I can remember when I first started nose breathing, it felt really weird. And even after I started, even when I had a cold or a chest infection, I'd go back to mouth breathing because I can't physically breathe in that bit there. But then actually is to how, as you said, you've got to be responsive to that. If someone's going to start nose breathing today, and they're used to mouth breathing, I suppose the main question is...
And you and I have both been through that, so yeah, okay.
Where do they start, and is it easy?
I would say it's a minor challenge. I would not, don't get upset if it feels really weird. It does feel odd. When I first started, I had mouth breathed my whole life. The only time my lips met was to speak when I was speaking. And those muscles were actually shortened. The first 6 months, I thought I was chasing my top lip up my mouth to get it to close. The sensation was literally I had to change that. But you can do things to open the airways up. This is a challenge. You might have to breathe out through your mouth first the first time you do this. But if you breathe out, then close your lips, pinch your nose, and this is going to look really weird, folks. Bob your head. Half a dozen times. And if you then take a couple more gentle breaths, if you can even keep your lips a little closer together and repeat. Weirdly enough, that builds up the CO2, opens up the airways a bit. You probably feel like your nose is going to drip. Do yourself a favor and don't blow, because that's just going to annoy it more. Just mop and do it again. Breathe out. Just a few times. If you've got a sore neck, just don't nod very hard, but it helps. Little bit by little bit, if you do that over a couple of days fairly often, more and more your body will be okay, because the airways will be a little wider and a little bit less full of stuff. It does help.
Nice.
It does. It takes practice, but it is something that is so worth doing, because I had the same thing. I thought it was the most horrible feeling in the world. I thought I was not getting enough air. But when I did it correctly, I ended up with a hell of a lot more air.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. The one thing that I struggle with, and I might be alone in this, or I might not be, but during the day, I'm conscious that I am breathing. I'm breathing through my nose. And that's a decision that, right at the start, I had to force myself to do it. Yes. Now it's a bit more responsive. But in the evening, when I'm going to sleep, I still mouth breathe. Because I haven't made that transition of falling asleep by breathing through my nose. I'm wondering, have you got any tips for people like me who are aware? They're probably halfway through the transition in terms of kind of nose breathing, but still revert to mouth breathing on occasion, if not as a norm in the evening. Well, when I'm trying to go to sleep.
It is quite common. Okay. Two things, and sleep apnea and snoring are related to all of this. Now, the thing is, we do, when we're asleep, we breathe deeper, we breathe bigger as part of the healing process, which means that if you're breathing still a bit too much during the day, when your body breathes a bit heavier, it will demand mouth breathing to achieve that. That's why it's doing it, right? So practicing breathing slower, and we just did that pause after the out-breath. If you can start to bring that into, say, a 10-minute period while you're going to sleep. So you just breathe a little bit slower as you breathe out, rest the breath a moment, and bit by bit, breathe lower and slower as you go to sleep. You'll sleep better. And if you practice that regularly, you'll actually snore a little less and have other problems a bit less. I work with people with this, the CPAP machines and all the rest of it. That's kind of a bigger, deeper journey, but it's doable, because you've got to change the body's muscle memory. And the desire to breathe in, weirdly enough, is not based on the oxygen levels. It's based on the carbon dioxide level building up. There's a chemoreceptor that says, breathe now, based on what it thinks is normal for you. So you can only change it a little bit at a time, because if you try and push it, it'll just go, breathe now, and demand. But if you take it a little bit over a period of time, when it thinks normal is to breathe, there'll be a longer space, the breaths will slow down, you won't be hyperventilating as much, and your body won't go into that heavy mouth breathing again. It's learnable. Might take a little bit of practical support, but it's worth a go. It's worth a go.
Yeah. No, and it's one of those things that I'm certainly going to try. And I've tried kind of being aware of it when I'm falling asleep. And do you know what? I might be doing nose breathing more than I realise. But because I'm asleep, I just don't know. But I know there's times when I'm not. And so therefore, I'm kind of weighing it up in my mind in terms of what else can I do to support that? And that tip is a great idea. Now, I've just noticed the time, we've been talking for about 30 minutes, which has gone really quickly. So first of all, I want to say thank you very much for I've learned a lot during this, and I'm hoping the listeners and the viewers would have done too. What would be your one big takeaway, your one big thing that you want to share with people who are watching or listening to this video or podcast?
That you are capable of improving your well-being with a small change, little and often. And it might be a dietary thing, it might not even be breathing, just you might get a tiny bit more exercise. Small changes add up. Give yourself that gift. And if you can breathe low and slow through the nose, that has a really beautiful cumulative effect. Low, slow, through the nose. It's reasonably memorable, I think. And then when you're lifting yourself out of the chair, in the pause after the out-breath, because it's so much less effort. And we need to give ourselves that gift of freedom and ease of movement. Yes, so at a practical level, those are the simple things that pretty well anybody can do now.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time today. I said before, I love this. And as soon as we had an initial chat, last month or the month before, I wanted to get on the show. So thank you so much for your time. If people wanted to find more information about you, the breathing coach, how? Also the Healer Zone Academy. How can they? Are you on have you got websites, social? How can people find out more?
Okay. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Jen Tiller, the breathing coach. That is actually the full name, Jen Tiller, the breathing coach. And you can find me on jentiller.co.uk. That's my website. I try to make it as simple as possible. I don't get complicated about things.
No, love it.
The Healer Zone Academy is, Healer Zone is the community for wellness professionals, coaches, and so on. If you're on Facebook, we've got 5,000 odd members in the community. It's a great community to belong to. So just look up Healer Zone, HEALERZONE. It's the Healer's Zone in the zone they do their best work in, the zone you find them in, but it's also the healer's own community. And that really, really works. And there's lots of stuff on my website. There's a downloadable self-nurturing pack. And I'm going to give the link to Gary later to put with this, and I'm going to give a discount code to go with that.
Thank you.
There's visualizations, there's my books, there's activity packs, there's videos, and yes, I'll give it to you for let you know. Okay.
Bless you. Thank you. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll put that link into the show notes. So please, if you're watching this or listening to this, go to the show notes, check it out, and I'll put a few other links in there as well that Jen will give me just to help you in your journey. I remember, if you want to connect with Jen, please do connect with her on socials. If you've got any events that you would like Jen to go talk at, you know, via Zoom, anywhere in the country, hell, anywhere around the world, do it. She's got a big goal that she wants to help 1 million people.
Yeah.
You know, we
can't
can't just do that.
No, can't do it on my own. Can't ever do that.
Exactly that.
And if you happen to be a wellness professional of any kind, whether it's medical, complementary, esoteric, a coach, I want to help with the basics of good breathing so that you can just spread it through your community. Together we grow.
And from the Grow Show to all of our listeners, thank you very much, Jen. That was brilliant. And thank you very much for watching this episode of the Grow Show. I'm going to end it there. Jen, thank you for your time.
Wonderful to be here.